Hello, everyone. I haven't updated anyone in a while because I've been in jail for the last 4 months. On December 11th of 2025, a family member contacted me in the morning on social media and told me that my mother is in hospice care and that I should go visit her. And so I kind of dropped everything, got in my van, went to go visit her that day, and have been in jail ever since. I showed up that day. There was a man. He was like 6'9". His name's Adam as well. And I come in and I'm going to the receptionist. I noticed him because he's looking at me and he's typing away on his phone. And I go up to her and I say, I'm Adam and I'm here to see my mother Marlene. And I'm looking over at this man again, and he's like looking over at me smirking and still typing, and he walks over kind of behind the desk area and says he's not allowed to see her. Never addresses me. He's just looking down at his phone, looking at her, completely uninterested, just kind of like not there. And I sit there, I stand there in the hallway for a couple of minutes just waiting to see what's going on. I say, hey, I'm going to go sit down on this couch over here while this all gets figured out. And I'm hanging out on this couch for a couple of minutes. And eventually I say to Adam, I say, hey, Adam, do you have a mother? And he didn't answer me. And then I repeated it and I said, do you have a mother at all? And then he turns and very brashly says, what the F does that have to do with anything? I told you to go outside. And I'm like, first of all, I'm like, no, you didn't tell me to go outside. So I hop up. Right before I leave to go outside, I shout down the hall. I said, my name is Adam Tebby. I'm here to see my mother, Marlene Tebby. And then I walk out. And I stand out front, and I'm kind of looking up at the sky. It's a cold day. I'm crying at this point because I don't know what the hell's going on. It's like nothing in my life seems to ever work out, even though I know I'm being refined by the Lord. And there's all these, I'm noticing that there's all these staff members and orderlies lining up the hallway now inside. And I'm like, I kind of peek my head in this kind of area between two double doors before you actually enter, and I kind of put my foot in and I say, hey, listen, it's cold out, can I stand in here while we figure out what's going on here? And he shouts, and I said, I'm getting to the point where I might need to call cops to do a welfare check to make sure that my mother's okay. And he said, the cops are already coming, you're trespassed. And I'm like, that's the first time I've heard that I'm trespassed. And so I hop, because I've been trespassing's been their favorite one, the last two times as well. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I know better enough to just go. And I hop in my van and I drive to St. Mary's Church in Arnheim, Ohio, which is where kind of my journey began. St. Mary has a lot to do with some of the things I've been through. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to talk about all that. Although the courts would like to use it against me for mental incompetency to face trial because they don't acknowledge anything spiritual, let alone Christianity, let alone how the heavens sometimes can interact with people. And I walk into the double doors. I grab a rosary that's hanging on the wall because I like to give them out to the homeless. Actually, I gave it to a homeless guy today who was hanging out in the Milford area. And I go into the church, and this isn't the first time I've done this, where I stand in the sanctuary. It's empty, but it's a place where the sanctuary's open, and I just start yelling at the Lord. Not just sort of exacerbated. Like, why am I going through all this? What's going on? And after a few minutes of that, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'll go. And as I walk out, there's a cop waiting for me. And we get to talking, and I get arrested and taken to Brown County Jail. which is a horrific facility, which we'll get into. And I went to 2 video arraignments. The second one, I believe, was on December 15th, and then that was the last time I saw my public defender on that December 15th video court, where I was trying to tell her, listen, this guy Adam made up all kinds. He said I threatened him. Again, he was like the size of Andre the Giant. I went in there and threatened him. Apparently, I threatened other staff, all this stuff, and I'd done it before. And it's like, I've never even been to this place before this day. I've been homeless, just kind of trying to survive the whole time. And she talks over me. The judge is uninterested. They're doing their own thing. This is whatever I'm saying. This ain't the time or place for it. And then I don't see her ever again. I was in that facility for over 3 months before I had my next meaningful court appearance after being mentally evaluated 4 times by the court without ever having consulted with an attorney to mount a defense at all. And was then learning that my own public defender had recommended from day one, essentially, that I be deemed mentally incompetent to stand trial. And I'm like, what is going on? And they had now this state forensic psychologist that had interviewed me, who we'll get into what it was, who deemed me mentally incompetent to face trial. Meanwhile, I had a cellmate while I was in there by the name of Shooter, who would walk around reliving some past trauma in his life, talking to himself and walking in circles, shanking the air, punching the walls, talking about reliving this scenario vocally over and over again. It was, listen, I'm a strong person. I got a strong faith. I've been through the fire before. I know that God's got me, but it was certain there were so many scenarios in there where it was taxing and trying on my spirit. And so that I was cellmates with him for almost a month, and it was a very difficult period. But that man was not deemed incompetent to face trial, mentally incompetent. Nobody was questioning his sanity. But for some reason with me, because the powers that be want to paint me this way, that's just a fact. That's the case. And so I was denied. I didn't even learn this until after the 90-day mark, where you're supposed to be afforded a speedy trial, that's what the court was trying to do. And then when I finally came into the physical court, it was just like a clown show. It's like they're literally, I could tell from the faces of everybody in the court, including one of the deputies who'd been witnessing this the whole time, that something stunk. Something was not right about this whole thing, and they knew it. And now they're just kind of trying to cover up the poopy in the cat litter. And finally, a friend of mine finally got involved, and they released me today, 4 months later, dropping all charges, but with the caveat, they told my friend, should Adam ever have a felony again, like he did when he was 19 years old, on his record, then the state can now just institutionalize him. We would have the power to do that. I honestly believe that was the whole point of this entire exercise. And so please, if I disappear, if I go into some facility like that, please, I am not mentally incapable to stand trial. What she said is that I'm logically paranoid, because apparently during that hour session, I had told her about when I was preaching at the Georgetown, Ohio courthouse, which has a Masonic lodge right across the street from it, how one day when I was preaching against the Brotherhood about exposing Hollywood and the industry and all of that, an old man came over to me and he says, hey, tell me, I heard you over there talking about the Freemasons. Tell me a little bit more about what you're talking about. And so I'm on my bullhorn preaching a little bit more about them. And then he stops me and he's like, hey, and he shows me his ring. And I didn't really pay attention, but he's telling me it's a 32nd degree Freemason ring. And he says, just one thing, don't F with the Freemasons. And, then I got on my bullhorn and was like, since when have I ever been afraid of a Freemason and all that stuff? And he goes running off and gets in a nice luxury car and drives off. It was parked right in front of the courthouse. And I told her that, and then I tell her I'm Catholic, and that former popes have written entire encyclicals on Freemasonry, about how John Salza has written books. He was a former 32nd degree Freemason. He's a Catholic author who talks about when he came out of law school as a lawyer, he was asked to join the Brotherhood and did, because he was told that it would be advantageous to his legal career, because many of the judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys are members of the Brotherhood. And so I think at some point I offhand said, honestly, I don't really have a whole lot of, if I'm being honest with you, I don't have much confidence in the court system, because, I know kind of some of the things that are behind it. And that was why I was deemed incompetent to face trial, where a man's falsely accusing me of things that never happened. It's just a fantasy bubble in his mind. And the whole time I'm like, I can't wait to get this on a guy on the stand, and the state would not allow me to, because look, you can read the implications of what I want to say. It was a setup, man. It was a setup. I was set up, and the courts want to pretend like corruption and things like that don't exist. Yeah, they do. Yes, they do. And I've been through this enough times now. Dear God, this is my third time going to jail since December 2024, where I gave everything away and started feeding the homeless, and then 6 months later, then God's putting prayers on me to feed, to build a homeless shelter. Then I become homeless 6 months later, and then it has been hardcore. And then you see that I got Brother Robert as my first testimony, and Robert, when I first met him, stopped me as I'm leaving and was like, hey, Adam, maybe I'll be your first testimony, like with almost like a twinkle in his eye and a smile. And then he becomes my first testimony when I change the entire direction of this YouTube channel. And then I meet Cliff, who I believe I've told you all about. I'm not entirely sure, but I have been going through nothing short of supernatural experiences for quite a while. And to the courts, they cannot acknowledge any of this stuff. I didn't talk to her about much of that stuff at all, because I'm like, these people, they're just looking for diagnoses. They'll never recognize a Saint Padre Pio. They'll never recognize a Saint Therese, right? Or a Saint Francis of Assisi, or a Moses talking to a burning bush, or a Paul on the road to Damascus talking to Jesus. They're never gonna recognize all that. So I was held for 4 months on a misdemeanor 1, denied right to any count. I literally never talked to a single lawyer about how to mount a defense. No one ever came to me with that. It was the only time I saw a lawyer was when, after that 3-month mark, she came in. Apparently the judge chewed her out a little bit to cover her tracks, and come into me in person and say, I just wanted to explain to you why I recommended that you be deemed incompetent to face trial. Meanwhile, my last 2 cases for Fountain Square with the Rosary and feeding the homeless, and then the Cathedral Basilica of the Assumption in Covington, Kentucky, for a trespass on the parking lot, trying to talk to one of the former bishops there, for having tried to help this homeless man named Kevin across the way, where my own Catholic church they just don't even, down there anyway, they don't appear to understand Matthew 25 or the letter of James. And for a failure to appear in a court appearance, I had to do 30 days there. During none of those cases, no lawyer ever propositioned that I'm incompetent to face trial or nothing. We got together, we talked about what needs to be done, and that was that. Because I'm not incompetent to face trial. Even this forensic psychologist said, yes, he was able to answer all the questions that I had about whether or not he understands what's happening and what he's facing. But he's logically paranoid, based on the fact that I'm telling you, I literally got threatened by a man across. It doesn't even matter, because that had nothing to do with the case. Now, for the last month, so many things happened there. Number one, I was moved all throughout this facility. because so from very very early on, I started to Shooter, God bless him, like came up with some of these early prototypes on how to make a rosary with soap that we're provided with, and so with bath towels, threads from bath towels, and soap, I started to learn how to make crucifixes with like a plastic spoon and a comb to poke holes into it and make little round beads. And we started to make rosaries for some of the men in the facility. And then I was teaching some of these guys how to pray the rosary and all that. And then one day I got let out into rec with other guys by accident. And a guy who I could tell had the wrong spirit around me at times threatened me that morning. And then I went back that morning and I all I did was I went beneath my door and I started to tell people about a man named Brother Yun from China who had his legs broken, who walked out of prison. And I was like about a minute into it. Now, meanwhile, this pod is off the chain in terms of loudness, all kinds of perverted talk, all kinds of, do you got drugs when you first come in and all this stuff. But for some reason, all of a sudden, the COs come in like gangbusters on me and they got to take me out. So I just got threatened up front, and then I'm just trying to share a little bit of the Lord, and they take me out of the pod, and they take me to a segregation area for a few days. This is Christmas Eve, Christmas. I asked one of the guards, could you please, just as a favor to me, play some Christian worship music on this day of my Lord? And about 10 or 15 minutes later, he turns on WEBN, where it's literally like Ozzy Osbourne, Mr. Crowley plays that night, and all kinds of heavy metal playing and stuff, and loud too. And then there's these guys screaming in all the cells, and I'm like, thank you, And then they put me in this other pod where, dear God, I mean, this is when guys are saying, has Jesus forsaken you on the block to me and all this stuff, hearkening back to when I was at the Justice Center, and one of the guards, as I'm praying my rosary, is walking by my cell, says in a mocking tone, is Jesus going to save you? Same spirit, just, it's just like that movie Fallen. It's just hopping, it's all around. We're living in like the Antichrist era. We've been living in that era for 2,000 years, but he is coming out in full force. And so, like, people trying to convince me God's given up on you, man. Like, look at you, you're in jail. All odds are against you. And so there I'm in recreation one day, and this young man comes in who you could tell ain't right. And like he locks eyes with me. He brings up, weren't you the guy that got checked on the other on C-Pod? And then he threatens to shank me right off the bat. And then I take the shower and he makes some weird homosexual rape joke towards me. And I said, are you talking to me? From inside the thing. And then everybody wants to check me because I just don't, listen, man, I'm not going to threaten nobody. I'm not going to get violent with nobody, but I'm not going to let you talk like that to me. I'm going to set the record straight. And then he's hopping up on top of the tables trying to turn on any kind of movie that starts with like Satan or hell and all that. I go back to my cell. He's walking around the halls doing whatever he wants, coming up to my cell like, come on out to rec again. And meanwhile, I'm being told by other guys that he choked out his last cellmate. And so then they move me from there back to C-Pod, where I had my own cell for a couple of weeks. And boy, that was a good time because I stayed in my own cell. I prayed the rosary every day. The most I prayed it one day was 36 times because St. Padre Pio used to pray it 36 times. And I thought, I want to be able to do that. I was floating that day. But I prayed a lot of rosary. I spent a lot of time reading my Bible. I didn't go submitting myself to a lot of the negative energy in the place. In fact, some of the dudes that I had been working with the rosary on switched up on me. That's an interesting sub video that I can make another time on how a young man came onto the pod who essentially was almost like a representative of the devil, who basically, it's like that parable of the seed that gets taken away before it ever takes root. And he was there, and and took this young man away from what I had been building up with him for a while. And but with like a very Gnostic perspective of Christianity, and also just kind of perverting all the teachings, and very demonized young man. His mother, he was telling me, was a bruja. She sacrificed chickens in her closet and all this. I literally prayed the rosary for him one day in there, and I said we want to break the any curses of witchcraft over him. And he got a nosebleed during that rosary session that we did. And from that point on, he became my enemy. And then this other young man who had been purely praying the rosary up until for weeks and had been loving it started turning on me as well. And I learned some things from that experience. Basically, when a man starts to go the other direction, just let him go. You know, you did your thing. You planted the seeds that need to be planted. At that point, you know, it's all in God's hands, because sometimes the devil comes and takes it away. I can't be that vested in it all. Then they took me, then one day they pop in and they just say, you got to move up front with this other guy. So I go into his cell. I lasted one night in there. He knows I'm a Christian. We're talking about that. And he just starts to get so perverse. His back's turned to me and he's like, yeah, I'm into that. Just so you know, I'm into that demonic shit. And I like voodoo and all this stuff. He tells me, and he ain't, but he tells me he's like the founder of Hell's Angels. He literally says like he's Legion. And I'm sitting there like, what is my life anymore? And then he gets up first thing in the morning, goes to the CO and goes like this, you know. And then the CO is looking at me like, what's going on, man? We just can't have it. You just can't go anywhere. Like I'm the problem. And I'm like, because I had told him in response, I'm like, again, in that scenario too, I'm not threatening or anything else, but I'm like, I'm not afraid of a witch. I'm not afraid of your little voodoo. Bring it on. Bring all 450 priests and priestesses of Baal at me. Go ahead. I'm good. I've been trained mightily in the fire, right? So then they moved me to B pod, which is a more leisurely, smaller place. There's 2 pods back there. There's a young man who walks around all day on the video calls with nothing but his a towel around his waist and around his hair after he gets a shower, talking to old women who put money on his books. And member of a gang. And one night when I was talking about God with another man in the pod, another Christian, he went into my room and wrote 666 the devil and put an inverted cross over my bed. And I saw it the first time that I think I slept that night, and only saw it the next morning. And I'm sitting there. Now, did I handle? I handled it the way I handled it. But that first time when this happened, I was fuming in my room. I sat in my room. I prayed for the day. I'm just sitting there like, what, upset. And then I finally came out and I said, listen, man, if whoever did it, just own up to it, I don't got to. We can talk about it, like, just own up to it. And crickets. I know who it was. It was crickets. And then another guy on the pod, like, he's like, one guy runs back there because I'm saying this is like a hate crime. And this other guy gets real scared, and he was my cellmate. And he's like, he gets some nail clippers and just starts scraping it all off the walls, all evidence of it. And another guy, who's another gang member of the other guy, is like, what are you getting upset about, Adam? Like, the Holy Ghost in him is compelling him to remove it now. Just mockingly. And I said, why is everybody so clownish about this? And then he got real assertive, and he's like, brother, if I wanted to, I'd beat the living shit out of you. Blah, blah, blah. And at that point, I was just like, it's not like I was afraid or anything else like that. But I just beat on the door and I was like, you got to get me out of here. And then I'm blamed again. Tebby, this is jail. Like, we keep having to move you all over the place. Then they take me to back B pod, where these guys start talking to me. Oh, it's not going to be like up there, And it took all of about a week for my cellmate at the time to fill up my entire cell with 666s, writing hell yeah, or the devil, this kind of stuff. He started writing it all throughout the broader pod too. This young man crashed out twice when I would watch TV because it was a very leisurely pod. One was late at night when Mother Angelica was praying the rosary. Only time I ever heard him get angry about anything on TV. And he crashed out on both of these occasions. And I tried to tell him, I'm like, you realize this is spiritual. This ain't spiritual. It's just too loud. Meanwhile, this kid would be up till 4 or 5 in the morning watching car explosion movies and all that. No, it was spiritual. And then the other night I was praying Mass. And so finally one day I told him what I thought. Because after he crashed out on Mass at night, when I would be kind enough to wait for everybody to go to bed, and then I'd watch a little bit of EWTN to get what I needed for the day. And he crashes out on it one night, and then the next day he's watching whatever he wants all night long. And that next day I told him what I thought. And I told him, because he was a young man of 20 years old who was always talking about how gangster he is and how he does all this, and he's been to Cleveland and he's been to Chicago and all that. And I just told him he's not a gangster. And he said, I'm not. He couldn't look at me and everything else like that. And he's like, I'm not even gonna waste my time on you. And I'm like, I said, yeah, you're not gonna waste no time on you because he ain't gonna do nothing. I said, and if you did something, I'm not gonna do nothing back to you. But I'm just gonna let you know what I think about how you're a hypocrite attacking the content that I was trying to watch. And then again, all these guards come in. I'm the problem again. Meanwhile, this young man he constantly is going to the court, coming back with all kinds of contraband. All these guys are in there chopping up their meds off the med carts, snorting it up their nose all the time. I'm the problem. And then I get moved from there back to C-Pod, where I was originally. And I'm put in a cell with a camera in the corner, and that's when I start my 23 out of 24 hour lockdowns. And that's how I spent the last month and a half or so of my being there. The young man who put the inverted cross was later brought into that C-Pod, and he would constantly come up to my door, turn off my lights, turn them on when I didn't want them on. He'd be across the hallway saying some of the darkest, most demonic stuff. And that was par for the course. I'd walk down to get my tray in the mornings, and guys would just be, the power of Satan compels you, or hail Satan, all these different things. I'm just like, dude, it was wow, to the point where one of the Christian guards finally had to admit, one of the guys that kept moving me around, he overheard some of it one day, and he's like, I see what you're talking about now. Yeah, you think? And yet, see, I was deemed the problem in jail because I wasn't a gangster. I don't act all criminal like that. I didn't fit in. I'm Holy Spirit filled, and so therefore I get punished. And then when I'm on 23 out of 24 hour lockdowns, they start denying me all my religious freedom. Not that they gave you much anyway. 1 hour a week with a Baptist that would come in. So what would a Muslim do? Well, they'd be out of luck. Let alone could they ever find a Quran in the facility? Absolutely not. All you can find are KJVs too. Men were complaining about how they don't understand the KJV. It was just I asked one of the guards one day about what would happen with a Muslim, and he said, well, all we have to offer them is Brother Dan. No, that is not correct. I'm pretty sure that would not align with federal law. I had a man trying to bring me in Catholic books from the local parishes. They wouldn't let him bring them to me. They just wouldn't. Simple, like page. Really, you think that these are laden with LSD or something like that? Are you that silly? No, you just like to screw over guys. My last cell for the last month, the base of it leaked sewage water and would develop black mold at the bottom. I still have today. This is my first day out. I've been having breathing problems, and I was having breathing problems. My smell would smell funky. I complained about it over and over again. One young CO came in and took pictures of it, sent it up. I asked him for a follow-up. He's like, I do what I can do, but it's like it goes nowhere. It goes nowhere with the higher-ups. This is Brown County Jail in Brown County, Ohio. Facts, you know. And and then the place floods constantly with poop and pee water. It's got such an old facility that some of these dumb prisoners who come in there who talk about absolutely nothing all night long think it's fun to flood the facility so that everyone's cell can be filled with poop and pee. For what reason? Nobody knows. I think you got to follow the money on that one, because apparently the guy who does all the plumbing fixing each time he comes out charges the county $800 to do it. The last 4 or 5 days that I was there, it happened every single night with the same guy instigating it all, and guards, nobody knows. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, we're surrounded by law enforcement, we're in jail with cameras, which should have audio everywhere too. Gosh, it seems like a real whodunit. He's talking about it all night long on the range, you know, screaming about it. We're going to have an FLUDD, a party tonight. Yeah, this same young man, 32, about to turn 33, would talk at night. Like one night he was talking about shooting dope boys down and over the Rhine in the stomach, who were black guys, who he then said, these guys have evolved over time. They're built for it. It's a good place to shoot them. It doesn't. And I'm like, what is this place? And the guards would come in and they'd reward a lot of these guys that are acting like this. And they're out all day long. They get to do whatever they want. They get to watch whatever they want. And here I am, locked down, can't even get my rec time moved from 11 to 12 a.m. to 12 to 1 a.m. so that I could watch EWTN Mass, because they said they didn't even realize that there's a difference between recreation time and praise and worship time or religious freedom time. It's like nothing. They've been doing whatever they want for so long. They don't perceive any threat to their way of doing things. They just do whatever they want, and they make up the rules as they go. And so it got so bad that in the last few weeks that I was there, a Baptist who comes and does a Sunday service, used to come and talk to me after it, and he was getting told by the COs that he's not allowed to do one-on-ones with me. Which is just like, so you're denying me on all fronts all this. I could go on with story after story after story of just the crazy spiritual warfare in this place. My last night there, the night before, it was all these guys screaming at me on the hallway. One of the common things, everybody called me preacher man everywhere I went. Hey, preacher man! And I'd usually not address it, but sometimes I'd be like, I'll humor it. What's going on? And then they'd be like, hail Satan, or F you, and that was just all the time. And yet at the same time, see, the beauty of it is, I know that the Lord allowed this because I was learning how to deal with my anger. I was learning how to deal with how to endure such persecution. And in the meantime, I'm back there all day reading through the Proverbs, reading through the wisdom of Ben Sirah, or the book of wisdom, which are proverb-like books, and just getting exactly the answers I needed to what was happening to me on a day in, day out basis. Like for one was, these are something simple, but a fool immediately shows his anger, while the shrewd conceals his contempt. Man, that one helped me. That's from the wisdom of Ben Sirah. That one helped me so much, right? Reading that, and just a lot of admonitions to guard the tongue and to bide the tongue and to bear your. And then I'm reading about remembering the 6 corporal work of mercy in the Catholic Church: bear all your wrongs with patience, and that was a mantra for me while I'm in there. Sometimes the Spirit of the Lord would overcome me, and I'd just have to say something. I even addressed that young man that shoots all the dope boys in the belly and stuff, and I was like, have you listened to yourself? That was why I was on the EdSeg. It's because I dared to ask these guys sane questions and stand in truth rather than, because that's the life I want to live these days. I don't want to live a safe life where I'm a coward and don't say the things that need to be said. I'd rather live in the spirit where I'm not afraid of death and say true things like the one that I serve. And so I'm not going to sit around. I didn't care. I knew at this point I'm surrounded by the enemy everywhere in this facility. Literally, I'm under lock and key. The powers of the state have been misused against me. I'm surrounded by all these jackals and hyenas around me. Sometimes, literally, the whole pod would howl in unison together. And then I read that night Psalm 59 about dogs growling throughout the city, surrounding him. And I'm like, dude, this is the Bible come alive for me, man. You know? And it's just, but I knew it was an illusion. Because for 9 years I've endured this. It was an illusion. I see right through it. The devil is a liar. He wants you to believe he's more. If he's that powerful, dude, you could have taken care of this a long time ago, real quick. But apparently you're not allowed by God to take care of it real quick. So that's a quick update as to where I've been. Number one, thank you. I came out to money on my Cash App, which has been very helpful. If anyone would still like to, I'm still trying to get my life organized. There's a couple of places that minister to the homeless that I'm going to start applying to, that I have connections with, that I'm hoping that a door opens finally to where my mission in life starts to align with how I make my money. And then that money can then be used to further help the very demographic that I want to help. Because I can't, look, I could keep living in my van and all that. Like, I just can't keep going the way I've been going for the last almost 2 years now. And this in and out of jail thing, it's like people keep telling me, like, now you've learned how to not go. No, I haven't learned how to not go to jail. The more I serve Jesus, the more on fire I become in the spirit, the more I keep going to jail. For absolutely nothing each time. The more the God of this age continues to attack me. These are just facts, man. But the courts, see, they don't acknowledge spiritual truth. All they acknowledge are Freud and Jung. Neither one of them men believed in Jesus. Both of them were on the square. One of them confirmed, one of them likely. One of them was a cocaine addict, and the other man was spiritually being visited by someone like an angel with wings that he called Philemon, that gave him all these insights into psychology. Sounds like spirituality to me. Wrong spirituality, but sounds like. So the courts are, what they did to me just now was dirty, so dirty, and I pray to God that what they are trying to do gets exposed. And I pray to God that I be used as part of a spearhead that starts to expose this weirdness that's been going on in our society. Because there's going to be a lot more people that go through it. Hey, shout out. I mean, it started out years ago. People were talking about gang stalking and all this. Now it's like the chosen community and all that. Look, a lot of people are hip to what's going on right now, right? A lot of people. The stuff that I was subjected to while I was in there was insane. So, but if you would like to help me even further with that, my Cash App is 1 Peter 4:12. And you'll find me on there, Adam Tebby on Cash App. Anything you can send my way is always appreciated. Right now I got a good amount to get around with gas, and hopefully I got a buddy that might be able to put me up for a little while. I'm praying to while I can start maybe getting taking care of some of these bills that have accumulated because I was forced into homelessness, unable to tie up loose ends at the time, and just being filled with the Spirit of the Lord to just want to go out and love on the homeless and not focus on all the stupidity of what my society tells me I'm supposed to be focused on. God bless you all, man. I missed you all. That's the best summary I can give you right now. And there, I'm sure will be later videos that tell you a bit more about my time and all this. But for those of you out there that are getting tested and tried and going through the fiery trials like I'm going through, hey, keep your head up, be a soldier, be a bondservant for Jesus Christ. Don't give up, endure to the end. And every time the devil steps to your face, step right back up to his chin and let him know you got no fear. Because that's one thing. Those who feared the Lord feared nothing. Feared nothing at all because their hope is in him. right? You know, blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, it says in Jeremiah. You know, God bless you all in Jesus' name. I love you. Hey, I got to know a lot more about my Bible while I was in there. That's a blessing. I refined a lot of some of my character traits, gained more patience, less less provoked to anger. I'm not a threatening anger type, but I'll admit, man, when the devil keeps coming at me and punking me, sometimes I get spiritually aggressive, and I let him. I set the tone at that point. I'm starting to learn to just trust the Lord more and just get spiritually violent in prayer. And how do you get spiritually violent in prayer? And we're going to wrap up on this by sending out blessings. Like spiritual warfare, the best spiritual warfare prayers are straight up blessings for others. Like some of the things that I would say is like, I pray that the same hounds of hell that you all are sending against me hunt you down for the sake of your own soul to determine whether you're headed to Sheol or whether you're going to be one of the Lord's chosen or not. I pray to God that you have to go through the trials that I've had to go through at some point. Or just saying, Lord, bless them mightily, right? Just the, because I believe it's in Proverbs. It says, oh, no, it's actually, I believe it's in the Wisdom of Ben Sirah. Beautiful book. It's Catholic. It's one of the Catholic books, Deuterocanonical or the Apocrypha in the Protestant tradition, where it says, if one man blesses and another curses, whose prayer does God hear? Question mark. And this is all confirmed in the New Testament too. If some of you are out there and you're still looking at suspiciously the Catholic Church, go look it up right now. Go look up the Wisdom of Ben Sirah. Read it all. It's like an extra Proverbs, and it's longer than Proverbs. And it is some of the most dynamite wisdom proverb stuff I've ever read. And you start scratching your head. It's like, why was this ever taken out of most of the Protestant Bibles? Let alone the Book of Wisdom right before it. And then there's the 7 books in total. First and Second Maccabees, right? Judith is another one of the books. You're missing some very rich stuff if you don't have the full canon of the Bible that was decided upon. So there's so many reasons why I'm Catholic. There's a lot of reasons that I could look at to say maybe why I shouldn't be at times, but it's very common for the church, especially if you really have a desire to really help the homeless, to really get out there and help the poor in an era where the church is more kind of bloated and filled with money. You're probably going to eventually be in the church, God willing, but you're going to get fought because we know that the devil's in the church as well. So anyway, that's an update on where I've been. God bless you all in Jesus' name. Thank you to those who may put money on my Cash App to help me continue to get through this period where I try to figure out what the next step is. Well, he's going to figure it out. I'm just where hopefully it seems like I come up with the next thought or idea that actually was his all along that takes me on the next leg of this journey. You just keep stepping out in faith, trust in the Lord. Know that if your name is written in the book of life, brothers and sisters, you're just a character in your own book. And everybody you meet is a character in your own book. And you can rest knowing that if the devil and his minions are now characters in your books, that you got nothing to worry about at all. Because the Lord's not going to bring you home until it's time anyway. God bless you all in Jesus' name. Have a wonderful night.